Now that we've talked about all four of these translations or transformations, let's talk about how we can use them to graph functions. So these are the two general forms for the equations of the graphs. A refers to the amplitude, and basically it talks about how stretched out the graph is vertically. We have when A is greater than 1, we're stretching the graph, and when A is less than 1, we're shrinking the graph. B changes the period, and it either compresses the graph or, as they call it, elongates it. And we know that the period is changed by taking 2 pi and dividing it by b. C and D are what we just talked about. C moves the graph to the left or to the right, and they refer to the points as the critical points or the true critical points. The true critical points are going to be after we've taken the C value and added our period divided by 4 over that. This is period divided by 2 or 3 times the period over 4. These are our quarter points added to the value of C. And then D is the vertical translation. When D is positive, the vertical translation is up. And when D is negative, the vertical translation is down. And that helps us find the range of the function, because we're going to find the range is D minus A and then D plus A. So our guidelines basically have us determine the period first. We're going to take 2 pi and divide it by b. Then we're going to determine the quarter values. Take the period and divide it by 4. Next, we'll apply the horizontal shift to each quarter value to create the x values for the 5 key points. So basically, the quarter values and the c value will make up our 5 x values. Then we apply the amplitude to the original y values, and then we apply the horizontal shift. We have to do it in this order because multiplying comes before adding or subtracting. And then the last thing is to graph the 5 key points and connect them with the smooth curve. So let's take a look at this first example. Y equals 2 times the sine of x minus pi over 2. So let's start with our amplitude. Our amplitude is the absolute value of 2, which is 2. Our period is going to be 2 pi divided by the number that's in front of x. Well, we don't see a number in front of x, so it's going to be 2 pi divided by 1, which is 2 pi. The quarter points are the period divided by 4. So 2 pi divided by 4 is pi over 2. Now, is there a horizontal shift? Well, is there a value that's in the parentheses with x? Well, we see that there's a horizontal shift, and it's right here. C is equal to pi over 2. That's going to mean that the graph gets moved right pi over 2 units. Is there a vertical shift? Well, do we see anything being added or subtracted? We don't. So that means the vertical shift is 0. Now we have to come up with our chart. So the first thing is the x values. We have to know where we're starting and what the quarter points are. Well, the vertical shift tells me where I'm going to start. I'm going to start at pi over 2, moving the graph over pi over 2. The quarter point is going to get added to that. Well, pi over 2 plus pi over 2 is 2 pi over 2. And I just keep doing that. 2 pi over 2 plus pi over 2 is 3 pi over 2. 3 pi over 2 plus pi over 2 is 4 pi over 2. 4 pi over 2 plus pi over 2 is 5 pi over 2. They're my 5 x values. For the y values, I have to understand which function I'm using. Since it's the sine function, I know the pattern is 0, 1, 0, -1, 0. My amplitude will take each of these values and multiply it. So I'll do 0 times 2, 1 times 2, 0 times 2, -1 times 2, 0 times 2. Zero times 2 is 0. 1 times 2 is 2. 0 times 2 is 0. -1 times 2 is -2. 0 times 2 is 0. Now we could talk about the domain and the range. Domain is going to be -infinity to infinity. Sine and cosine functions have no domain restrictions. The range is based on what the biggest and smallest y values are. So my smallest y value is -2. My biggest y value is +2. So now I'm going to graph my 5 key points. So I'm going to start at pi over 2. Notice that these lines here along the x-axis don't have any values on them. I can make them whatever scale I want. So I'm going to make this first line pi over 2, the next one 2 pi over 2, the next one 3 pi over 2, the next one 4 pi over 2, and the next one 5 pi over 2. Okay, I could have spaced them out more, but as long as I keep them evenly spaced, it's fine. Now I'll plot my y values. At pi over 2, it's 0. At 2 pi over 2, it's 2. At 3 pi over 2, it's 0. At 4 pi over 2, it's -2. And at 5 pi over 2, it's 0. So now if I just change this color for a second, I'll connect the dots. And that would be the graph of this particular function.